Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Hello, welcome back to Legends in Leadership. This is your host, Jason Smith. I'm a family officer with the Carrington Group. I'm joined today by my co-hosts, Dr. Blair Ritchie, Executive Director of the International Student Foundation, and Tyler Tallman, also a family officer and my partner at the Carrington Group. Hello, guys.
Hey, good to be here.
Same here, and glad to be back with a guest this week.
Yay.
And excited to dive into his story. But first, as we do every week, we're going to kick things off with our leadership trivia. Dr. Blair, what do you have for us this week?
All right, you guys are football guys, right?
Absolutely.
So here we go. This is tonight, the 100th season of the National Football League begins. Did you know that for the first two seasons, the NFL wasn't the NFL? That it was formed in 1920 as the American Professional Football Association. So the APFA began and 2 years later became the NFL. And today's legendary leader was the very first president of that fledgling league.
Okay.
You need some more?
All right, I got it.
You got it? Mm-hmm. Good. Anyhow, he was also a coach in the league of the Canton Bulldogs, as well as its star player. Our leader was truly a legendary figure, dubbed by the Associated Press as the 20th century's greatest athlete. The first Native American to earn Olympic gold medals, played professional baseball as well. But it was on the gridiron that he achieved his greatest exploits. Without him and his influence, who knows, the baby NFL might not have come to be. 100 years ago, the Dayton Triangles beat the Columbus Panhandles 14-0.
The Columbus Panhandles.
In the inaugural game of the NFL's first season. Can you name the first president of the National Football League? I'll be back at the close of the
That's a good
program.
one.
I believe there's an award.
Yes, there
named
is.
after
Very
him as
nice.
well.
Very
Yes,
nice.
yes.
But do you know what the award's for?
I do, but we'll talk about that at the end of the
All
show.
right.
I want to give Jeff a
right.
chance at that one as
All
well.
right. Yeah.
All right, good.
Well, we're excited to welcome our guest today, Jeff Crilley, who retired from TV news after 25 years in the business to start the country's first all-journalist PR firm. During his career, he made hundreds of national news appearances, including CNN, CNN Headline News, Fox News, the Discovery Channel, Good Morning America, and the CBS Early Show. He has been recognized by his peers with dozens of national and regional awards, including the Emmy, the National Headliners Award, the Edward R. Murrow Award, the Thurgood Marshall Award, and in 2004 was named by the Texas Associated Press the best TV reporter in the state. Having seen the failures of the public relations industry firsthand from within the newsroom, CEO Jeff Crilley founded Real News PR with a vision to equip his company with a team of media experts. The mission of Real News PR is to deliver publicity at the speed of news with the purpose of delivering results instead of promises. So we're going to welcome Jeff Crilley to his own studio today. As the Carrington Group, Legends in Leadership, we use Real News PR for our podcast and other services. So welcome to your own studio.
You. Hey, I'm thrilled, and congratulations on your success. This is episode number
42.
42. That is amazing.
Yeah, been a lot of fun.
I think the statistics show that the average podcast only goes 7 episodes before the host tire of it.
Okay.
So we always tell folks, man, if you can get past that first dozen, you've got a hit. And you've just had so many amazing guests in this studio. Congratulations.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
We actually have been talking about how much we've gotten out of this. We knew we'd meet great people, but man, it's a nice little weekly nugget that we get to take away always with these great guests. So.
And it's just really laid back and relaxed. And
Yeah.
you guys always sound like you're having a great conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put you on the other side of the mic today.
Okay.
Learn a little bit about you and your background. And as a leadership show, we'd like to hear from you a little bit about some early influences in your life that have put you on the path to where you are today.
So I have to say my dad. So my father was a Presbyterian minister in downtown Detroit.
Nice.
Right after the race riots. So the race riots were 1968, and he took over a pastorship in downtown Detroit in 1969.
Wow.
And so leading a downtown church in a city that had just come through, that kind of upheaval was really challenging. And I watched how my father led, and he just did. I call him the all-loving father. He's still with us. He's semi-retired, living in Waco with my mom. They just celebrated 60 years of marriage. Wow. And so I try to run the company like my dad would run a company or run the church, which is just kind of like all-loving father. So I chose deliberately to own the company but not run the company. Owning the company is much more fun than running the company. So my daughter Sarah is 29. She runs the company, and I get to do the fun stuff, which is come on shows like this one and meet people. And I have a really blessed life.
Well, what comes to mind when you think about your dad taking over that church in a very volatile time? How did he portray or illustrate those values in his daily life that have influenced you?
I think my father is just fascinated by people. So as a little boy watching my dad kind of go through the coffee hour after church and tune into the wavelength of the person that he was talking to, and he wasn't looking past them for someone more interesting to talk to. He was really on their planet during the the minute or two that he's visiting with them. And I try to do that today. Put away distractions. Don't look at your cell phone, really tune into the person that you're talking to, because they can feel it. They can feel when you're listening, and they can feel when you're tuned out thinking of something more important. And that's something that I take away from my father.
That's become more and more challenging to do, even with more access and more devices, to really have those personal conversations.
I'm sorry, what was that? I wasn't listening.
The phone vibrating?
Checking my messages.
Well, where'd the inspiration come from to explore journalism as a career?
So career day, do you remember high school?
Oh, yeah.
Career day.
Yeah.
So I went to all-boy Catholic school, and the two most crowded rooms were the funeral director.
Seriously.
Well, it's an all-boy Catholic school, so we just wanted to ask
morbid curiosity.
Morbid questions. Nobody actually wanted to be a funeral director. We just wanted to ask those questions. And then there was the local TV guy, and I remember his name was Dave Whitman, and he came in from the NBC station in Detroit, and my memory is that he had a convertible, and he was a good-looking guy, and kind of breezed in, and it's filled to capacity. All these, colleagues of mine in school are just kind of mesmerized by him, and I thought to myself, you don't have to go off to Hollywood to become a star. Like, you can be Ron Burgundy. You can be a star on TV news. And so I probably, my first influence probably got me in for the wrong reason, which was fame. But when I got into the business, I discovered that I love storytelling, and in a cool way, even now, all these years later, we're still telling people stories. Only we're allowing them to tell their own story through platforms like the ones that you guys are enjoying. And so my vision for where the company is going is, yes, we're still going to get people on Fox and Friends and the Wall Street Journal, but you can become the media now, thanks to the technology that we have. I mean, you can broadcast to countless people who will watch it live or later online, and so we're giving all of our clients the ability to become their own broadcaster. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I know you have so many good stories. You describe yourself as a storyteller, and you really are a great storyteller. So any stories that come to mind early on in your career where you said, maybe I don't want to be a broadcaster? Anything to come to mind?
I was when I first got into TV news, I was an intern at the college. Well, it was a commercial television station, but it was a small market television station in Lansing, Michigan, and I was just so thrilled to be on television. It really didn't matter if I was doing corny dogs at the state fair or murder. I was on TV. I remember the first time I got recognized, I was in the grocery store and somebody thought I was the sports guy. It didn't matter. I was like, I called up my dad. Hey, Dad, I'm famous. They thought I was the sports guy, but they recognized recognized me. And then started climbing up through the market. So I went from Lansing to Omaha to Minneapolis for 4 freezing years. And then got the job in Dallas at Channel 4 in 92. Got off the plane in October of 92, and by that winter, the Cowboys were in the Super Bowl. And I just, I came from a town that was tormented, the Vikings. They'd been to the Super Bowl 4 times and lost all 4. And so coming down to Texas and having, reigning Super Bowl champs, I was kind of a little spoiled. In fact, it was almost like, okay, where's the Super Bowl next year? Where are we going? You remember that time?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have to educate the viewer. There was a time when the Cowboys were really good. And hopefully with Zeke, maybe we can do it again.
Hopefully.
Yeah, they paid him enough, didn't they?
They sure did.
Yeah.
You need to have him on the show.
Yeah, well, let's make it happen.
Yeah,
It'd be fun.
That'd be great.
So in your travels, the multiple markets, small markets to big markets, I'm curious, especially in today's world, we seem more connected and yet polarized. And I'm curious, in your travels and storytelling, what are some common themes that you found that people across this country share?
I think the country loves resilience. In TV news, there's the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads. And I think there's a lot of negativity out there. But I've always liked, even in the hurricane or the destruction, that story of brotherly love or stranger helping stranger. I've always loved those stories, and thank goodness the news still does put a spotlight on those towards the end of the newscasts. There's always the hometown hero stories that are out there, and that to me is what journalism is supposed to do. Is it gives you some encouragement and learning from somebody else.
So not all news is fake news.
No, no. But I'm disappointed that the news business became so polarized. When I got into the news business, you just watch the news. Now you have to think, okay, what channel am I watching, and what slant might they have, and that's disappointing to me that the media, went in that direction. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned resiliency. The first time I heard you speak was at a small Rotary Club in Grand Prairie, Texas. When you were on a pretty aggressive speaking tour, very resilient. So how did you make the transition from TV newsman to public speaker and PR company owner?
Great question. So I never intended to leave TV news. I was just moonlighting. So when you heard me, I was probably out there moonlighting. So I wrote this book in 2002, Free Publicity. If anybody wants a copy, just, write into the show. I'll give you a free copy. But I went around like a crazy man for 6 straight years, giving 300 speeches a year in addition to my TV job. So it was breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to Fox 4. Breakfast speech, lunch speech, go to Fox 4. Well, I sold 70,000 copies of the book, and the business was born because, as I'm signing people's books, they're either complaining about their current PR firm, or they're saying, I could buy your little $10 book, Crilley, but I don't have time to do any of this stuff. Could I just hire you? And after hearing this for 6 straight years, I thought to myself, I've got a second act. I think we all climb to the top of the little hill that we're climbing, whatever that is. And I was climbing a hill called Local TV News Reporter. They weren't going to make me Clarice Tinsley. I was never going to go any higher than I was as a local TV reporter. And so I asked my wife's permission to quit in May of 2008. And 1 month later, the housing bubble bursts, and we go into the Great Recession, which could have been devastating, but I already had 70,000 books out there declaring me the expert. So I never had a bad year. First year, just me working out of my house, I had 10 clients. Second year, me working out of my house, I have 20 clients. I have to start hiring people. So I hired my first employee. He's still with us today, Chris Gamberry. He's our lead videographer, and he's been with me ever since. But now I wake up and sometimes I walk into the offices of Real News PR, and we're having a team meeting where we're gathering, all 20 employees together, and I'll say to myself, where did all these people come from? Right? How did that happen? But it's fun. I mean, we now have over 100 clients, the largest being Walmart, and the smallest being an author at home, and it's just a joy to help tell people's stories.
Thank goodness that he didn't just name us as his smallest client. Jeff, you have this interesting way of describing a great speech, of which you blend Haagen-Dazs ice cream and broccoli together in your description. So for the public speakers out there that are looking to create an engaging speech, tell or at least create your perspective for our listeners on what a good speech looks like.
Sure. So I tell people a great speech is Haagen-Dazs broccoli, Haagen-Dazs broccoli, Haagen-Dazs broccoli, standing ovation. Now let me explain that. So the Haagen-Dazs is the story. It's delicious, and some rich stories can last 6 or 7 minutes, and then the broccoli is the moral of that story that you just heard. Mm-hmm. And the ideal speech is keep the broccoli short, because if you gave them all broccoli, they would go to sleep. If the whole speech was broccoli, they would go to sleep. If you gave them all Haagen-Dazs, they'd have sugar shock. They'd say, man, I heard great stories, but I have no idea what that speech was about. What was that supposed to be? So you give them a lot of Haagen-Dazs, a little bit of broccoli following up the Haagen-Dazs that you just gave them, and people will feel completely nourished. And so I challenge you to just watch a great speaker like Tony Robbins or Les Brown, and you'll see some version of Haagen-Dazs broccoli. Even Joel Osteen, the pastor, famous pastor from Houston, if you look at what he's doing every Sunday, it's really Haagen-Dazs broccoli, a little bit of Bible. Haagen-Dazs broccoli, a little bit of Bible.
So I remember you telling me, maybe I misheard you, but there's a big difference between being a local news reporter and then standing in front of a room of 100 to 500 people. Is it true you were pretty nervous early on starting out, and you were going, God, I hope they stand up. I hope I get that ovation. Is that true?
Yes. I remember being petrified because, television, you're talking to kind of a box, right? And it doesn't throw things at you and it doesn't judge you. And then speaking to a live audience, when you bomb, right? The number one fear in America is the fear of public speaking, and the number 2 fear is death. And if you die on stage, you accomplish both, which I have many, many times. I got to tell you a funny. So as I'm learning to speak, I'm running around, and I'm sleep deprived. Right? I'll get home from the TV station at about 11, go to sleep, wake up at 6 in the morning, shower. And sometimes I'm giving like 7 a.m. speeches, and I remember I was giving this speech at where was I? It was like the Elks Lodge or something like that in East Dallas. And it's early, and I'm getting my books out, and I see the Elks Lodge. And so I come in to give my speech. And right before the speech, I saw this professional speaker that I really admire. She was part of the National Speakers Association. And so I was like, I'm giving a speech in front of a real pro. So I really have to turn it on. So I'm giving it all the energy. I'm the Elks this and the Elks that and Haagen-Dazs broccoli. I nailed it. And at the end, kind of a smattering of applause. And I went up to this professional speaker afterwards, and I said, what'd you think? And she was like, oh, it was good. I was like, well, is there anything that you would improve? She says, well, it's just one small thing, and I'm sure nobody noticed. I said, what was that? She says, we're not the Elks.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no.
We just meet here. We're the Rotary. That's one of those want to get away moments.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. How inspiring for those out there that are like, man, I'm the only person that's ever bombed a speech before. So here's Jeff Crilley. He's given thousands of speeches and had his moment of embarrassment.
You have to.
Yeah.
I mean, each one of those little times you skin your knee, you're like, okay, note to self. Make sure you know who the group is and what their pain points might be, so you can actually minister to that group.
But, so moving, I guess, on the other side of that coin from one of the most challenging outcomes, you shared previously with me a story about one of the best outcomes you had for a group that had pre-purchased your book ahead of time.
Yes.
And so for folks that are building a public speaking business and authoring, there's that dynamic of, I gotta nail this, but got to go sell those books afterwards. So what do you think was different about your delivery or that experience when the books were pre-purchased that you learned from?
So in the first year or so when I was speaking, I was in the wrong mental space. I was looking at wallets and purses in the audience. All I was thinking about was how much money I was going to make after the speech was over at the book table at the back. And then, quite by accident, a group said, hey, how much does your book cost? I said, $10. And the organizer said, well, we've got 30 ladies. If we just stroked you a check for $300, we could buy 30 books for all of our our attendees. I said, yeah, absolutely. So she wrote me the check before the speech, and I gave the exact same speech I'd given the day before, mechanically. Same stories, everything. But I got a standing ovation, and as the forms were coming back, it was 5 out of 5. Does he travel? Can I bring him to my ladies' conference in Waco? And I just thought to myself, I'm looking at the evaluations, and I was like, what happened? Did I get more sleep? Was I just on today? And then I had that V8 moment when I was like, your heart was different. There was no sale today. You weren't looking at wallets and purses. You were actually looking at hearts and souls. And at that moment, I remember giving it up to God and saying, you know what? Forget the money. Forget the money. The money will come. If I truly give, it will come back tenfold, just as it says in the Bible. And so I honestly imagine energy coming from above, hitting my head. I push it down to my heart. I push it out from my heart to the audience. They feel it, accept it, and they give it back. And a great speech is an energy flow that happens between you and the audience. And I know now. I know when I'm in my heart, and I know how to get there again. It's almost like a baseball player knows when the ball is released from his fingers, whether it's a strike or not. And I know how to get in my heart and how to stay there throughout the whole speech. And the key thing is to really not think about profit, because if you do, it just short circuits everything.
Right.
That's rich.
Good
That's
stuff.
rich. I'm intrigued leadership-wise about your organizations.
Sure.
Well, I'm in your offices. I'm always impressed with the vibe, the energy, the youthfulness around you. So talk about leading that kind of an organization, because you're surrounded by a lot of young energy.
Thanks.
That are all listening to you right now, too.
They're all listening. I hope they are. So I would tell it to them too. So I'm a boomer. So I just turned 56, and boomers have a different journey, right? When I got into the TV business, it was yes, sir, and absolutely, and whatever you say, and how high should I jump, right?
When do you want me to come down?
Exactly. and the millennial generation and Gen Z that follows is a different generation. They want to collaborate. They want to be a part of the process. So there's infamous stories of people graduating right from college, and during the interview process, they're almost flipping the script and interviewing the boomer boss and asking him, how many vacation days, what are the perks, and the boomer boss just wants to say, what are you, crazy kid? You just, Okay, so I know the dynamic. So I love what my father did, being the kind of the all-loving father, and I realized that the only way to create that is to own the company and not run the company. And so having my daughter run the company, there's just a completely different dynamic. It is collaborative, and we do want this, we call it a Thank God It's Monday company, because you have a work family that one of our employees got married a couple years ago, and when she took off on her honeymoon, the employee who sat right next to her got sad. I mean, she was sad because her work buddy was missing. And that's always stayed with me. And I feel like we actually have the best combination we've ever had at Real News PR. And one of my challenges as a leader, I believe, is always making sure that I'm the gatekeeper. If I've organized this Garden of Eden where people are happy to come to work and be in this wonderful environment of support, then you, Jeff Crilley, are the guy who ushers people in or allows them to leave the Garden of Eden. And that requires you vetting them on the front side and making sure that is their energy going to match our company culture? Is this somebody that I want to bring into my company? Or is this an energy that I can do without? So we're super big on attitude and optimism, and I think I have really attracted almost a team of really sweet, kind people. I put a big priority on attitude and kindness. And that's why, and thank you for the compliment, I hear that over and over again. People will come in the front door and they're only in the space for 2 or 3 seconds, and they'll say, this is like a happy company, right?
Yeah.
And then I love hearing laughter in the office. I mean, it's really cool. So, and the other part of that is I can't have toxic clients. So
Sure.
when I'm vetting clients that come in the front door, I'm always saying to myself, do I want to expose my team to this energy? Is this a good energy or a bad energy? And we're successful enough now that I don't need anybody's money, which is wonderful. It allows me to not, have to take anybody who comes in the front door.
Sure.
I'm actually evaluating them on, one, would we have success with them? two, are they going to be kind and will they praise us? And those are the two big ones. And we don't have a problem, recommending other PR firms to clients that,
Might be a better match.
That might be a better match.
Speaking of PR, PR can have a bad rap too, and it leads me in wanting to hear your perspective on podcasts, because podcasts have kind of become a fad. They've become a craze. It's become a new medium for people to listen to content in a different way when they want to, ad-free most of the time, or at least limited ads. So talk about podcasting and how it's really evolved for you at Real News, and I think evolved in a direction that maybe you never even expected.
Right. So when we first started our podcast division, we were upstairs in the same building in a very small office. It was 2,200 square feet. And at first, it was just audio. In fact, if anybody's interested, the first board that we ever used is about this big, and it's a piece of artwork. It's hanging right there. And my daughter convinced me. She said, "Dad, we need to start a podcast." And I was like, "Sarah, who listens to podcasts?" She says, "My generation, all those young people jogging on the Katy Trail listening to stuff in their earbuds. It's not music, Dad." And that was like, hit me between the eyes. I was like, wow, young people listen to podcasts. Okay, so I gave her my credit card. I said, don't go crazy. So she goes out and we built a little teeny studio upstairs here at Lincoln Center, and we added some GoPros, so we're kind of experimenting with television, video podcasting. And then as I was giving the tour upstairs, I would say, we can get you on CNN, we can get you on Fox News, and they'd say, you have a radio studio? I'd say, yeah, we've got a radio studio. I can get you on CNN. And they're like, no, but this is kind of cool. And then they would sit in there and they'd start playing around, and we'd give them a music open. And then I said to myself, okay, this is different. This podcast thing has some legs. Mm-hmm. And when we outgrew our space upstairs and we came downstairs, we took over two of the highest visibility spaces in the whole building. In fact, we put it into the lease. We're building the Today Show in your lobby, just so you know. Lights, cameras, action. And it changed the vibe of the company for the positive. I mean, when you talk about happy employees, there's also so much energy. Sometimes we have three, full TV studios now, and sometimes all three are hopping. And so when you come in, you got, you're seeing, sometimes celebrities coming in or leaving, and people running around. It really does feel like a news operation, and I love it. I have the coolest company ever.
So if somebody was out there and they were thinking about starting a podcast, what makes a great podcast?
So I love this. I'm not saying this just because I'm on your podcast, but what we're having right now is a great podcast. It's just, four guys sitting around kind of talking, and the audience is eavesdropping on our conversation. It's effortless. You guys are just kind of asking different questions that feel like a great conversation over coffee. You guys are doing it absolutely right. I think there's a couple of reasons to do a show. You could do a show for marketing reasons, or you can do a show for networking reasons. And I'll give you an example of a networking reason. Let's suppose you want to meet somebody, but you couldn't get them to have lunch with you, or you play a game of golf with you. If you say you need to come on my show sometime, it's a completely different ask. So some of our podcasters are using the show as a business development show, and it's another way to look at your platform. I think there's a marriage there. You have to strike a balance. Am I giving nourishment to the person listening at home? And is this show ringing the cash register? Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And to be clear on the front side, what's the goal of the show? Is it to become a national thought leader? And there are different strategies to take you down different paths. But I truly believe there will be a day where every company has its own show. It'll be like a website, when two people meet at an event. we'll bump phones and say, here, I'll subscribe to your show, you subscribe to mine.
Right.
Our largest client is Walmart, and Walmart hired us not to get them on the news. They know how to get themselves on the news. They hired us to create programming for Walmart TV, and I didn't know there was such a thing, but in all of the break rooms of 5,000 Walmarts, the employees aren't watching Fox News or CNN, they're watching Walmart TV. And that could be training videos. Many times it's little features that we created here in Dallas and sent to Bentonville, and they're positive feature stories about amazing Walmart employees. And that edification from Walmart, saying, if Walmart is a top 5 company in America, if they see the wisdom of having their own show, their own network where they can broadcast to their own employees, then why wouldn't every company do some version of that, whether they're broadcasting internally or to the masses as you guys are? But I think we are seeing a shift, and because YouTubers can now have 90 million followers. 60 Minutes only reaches 13 million. It's a new day where, truthfully, the millennials don't care how it got on their phone. Is it on my phone? Is it clean? Is it clear? Is it, is it humorous? Is it educational? What? As long as it's on their phone, they don't care how it got there. And that to me was a mind shift, because my generation is, you watch channel 4, 5, or 8. It had to have come from a commercial television station. Well, there are, teenage girls in Highland Park with 1 million fans that do nothing but show you how to put on makeup on their webcam.
Right.
And so that to me as a marketer is, man, this is a new day. The technology has changed where it's really straight from studio or, living room to phone. The delivery system of live streaming has changed everything.
Yeah.
So from a PR perspective, how do you advise clients to then partner with those types? So to the 2 girls in Highland Park, there's opportunity there to reach an audience. What does it look like to try and partner with this more diverse and, I guess, spread out opportunity versus the 3-channel type of approach from the old TV style?
Well, so you have broadcasting and then you have narrowcasting. So when I was a kid, you had to hire the kid down the street who played guitar to teach you how to play guitar, right? These days, if you want to learn how to play Stairway to Heaven on the guitar, you just go to YouTube and put in how to play Stairway to Heaven on guitar, and there's like 50 videos.
Right.
So I think, we're in this era of YouTube has become video Google. So anything you need to learn, you can learn on YouTube. And if you chose to narrowcast and only specialize in a certain niche, so like if I started a podcast about how to do better podcasts, that's a niche. Somebody who's thinking about doing podcasting for the first time says, wow, let me go to YouTube, how to do a great podcast. And here it is. Here's this Jeff Crilley guy from Dallas who's now talking about their best shows and what makes them great, and interviewing, their podcasters on why your show is so successful. That becomes a narrow podcast. Not everybody is into podcasting, but if you are, you could become a thought leader in that space. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So instead of trying to broadcast and hit, hopefully, that small sector of people that might be watching at that particular time, you're creating this on-demand content that they can access on their own time at their own interest.
Absolutely. And let me just go back to praising you guys. Is it okay to praise you guys?
We'll allow it.
We're okay with this.
It's a rare moment.
You have 42 episodes. And so if somebody is going into YouTube because they've just been put in a leadership position and they're like, gosh, I've never even read a leadership book. How am I going to learn how to become a leader? Let me just put in leadership podcast. And I haven't done this, but I would suppose that if you put in leadership podcast right now on YouTube, you guys are probably on the homepage.
We are.
Are you?
Yeah. Okay,
because it's tagged right, and there's 42 of them. And one of the things that Google and YouTube do is say, "Wow, okay, well this is coming every week. This is a thing. They're up to episode 42. This deserves placement on page 1." Somebody comes to your show, no matter what episode they watch, you guys are producing such a good product, they say, oh my goodness, I need to subscribe. I need to go back and watch, episode 1 through 42.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and that was one of the motivators for us at ISF, because we're creating this library of leadership, and our students around the country are able to listen. We had a guest not too long ago who was just a really great model for women in business, and we have so many young ladies in ISF, and we just sent that podcast to every one of our students to say, listen to this gal. She has something to say to you.
I love it. And because you're getting such high caliber guests, when somebody goes to do their homework on YouTube, I know you had Chef Richard Chamberlain from Chamberlain's Steakhouse and Fish Market in a while back, and that was a great show, and I learned stuff about Richard. He was a client of ours. I learned stuff about Richard from watching your show. But you can imagine somebody is thinking about applying for a job at Chamberlain's, and so they put into YouTube Richard Chamberlain Dallas, boom, up pops your podcast. So I think each one of your guests is helping your reach, because they'll find it for different reasons, whether they're looking for leadership or they're looking for a specific guest.
Yeah, to me, it's such a two-way street of value. I mean, the way I see it is that the guest that comes in, what a rich way to create the relationship with somebody new that in the grassroots growing to lunch or coffee is all great, but there's something, for lack of better terms, kind of sexy about this. It's cool to come sit down in a studio and talk to somebody in a different way. So they're getting value, we're getting value, and hopefully creating a great connection for ISF and for the Carrington Group.
Absolutely. So. Can I ask you, do you guys still get a little butterflies in your stomach before you go live?
I do. I get excited, and really more looking forward to where a conversation goes.
Yeah.
So we do a bit of prep work, but certainly go with the flow.
Especially when the guest's 10 minutes late.
Busted.
Is he going to make it?
Some of the
I got stuck in traffic.
right.
It was hard coming down the stairs.
Yeah, I think if you're not a little bit nervous before anything you're doing, there's probably something wrong. I think there's good nervousness that you need. I mean, if you look at some of the top athletes in the world, I think it was Arnold Palmer that said that if I didn't have some jitters in the first tee box, then I knew something was wrong with me that day. So
that's cool.
Well, get complacent with things, if you're feeling a little bit of that energy.
I got a little butterflies in my stomach as I was waiting for the open to the show. Honestly, there was silence, and there was something kind of eerie about the silence before we heard the show open, and I started to experience those familiar butterflies that I had in TV news.
Yeah.
Gosh, Jeff Crilley had butterflies coming on Legends and Leadership.
Awesome.
He has stroked our ego today. We better wrap this show up.
Let's wrap up before it takes a turn. No, but in all seriousness, we do enjoy the opportunity to create our show here and the fabulous setup that you've built here.
Well, you guys are wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, let's kick it back to Dr. Blair Ritchie for the answer to our leadership question.
All right. Well, guys, I'll throw you can give me the answer to the first president of the National Football League.
And Tyler, take a swipe at that.
Jeff, any idea?
So I'm trying to. I mean, you said baseball, so I'm trying to go back to those. But
he also played baseball.
Yes.
He played baseball.
Yeah, played
and an Olympic athlete.
for 3 different teams.
All right, I'm gonna this is like really random, but Honus Wagner.
Wow, that's a good guess. Old Pittsburgh Pirate, but that's not the right one. Yeah.
Before I say the award, I want to make sure I get the person right. Is it Jim Thorpe?
It's Jim Thorpe.
Really?
Jim Thorpe, yeah.
I had no
and
idea.
the award, Jim Thorpe Award, is given annually for the best defensive back in college football, I believe.
That's right. Defensive back award. Yeah.
Great trivia.
Yeah, great trivia. And tonight's the Bears and Packers for the 100th season.
NFL is back.
It's back.
Steve Levy on Monday Night Football.
There you go.
Yeah, about
All
that.
right.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, thanks again for being our guest. It's been a real pleasure to have you on today. And just want to say, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. And on behalf of myself, Dr. Blair Ritchie, and Tyler Tallman, wishing you a good day. And remember this: if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by the Carrington Group. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. To learn more about the Carrington Group, visit their website at www.carringtonfo.com or Google Carrington Group, Dallas, Texas. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphaned youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. To learn more about ISF, visit their website at isfsite.org or Google International Student Foundation to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.